Hey everybody, it's Kevin from Retro Future Guy. So I wasn't originally planning on talking about this, which is why I'm a little late to the party, but seeing as how I still find myself thinking about it, maybe I'll give my 2 cents about one of the most divisive and polarizing games and subsequent TV adaptations in the past decade, or perhaps ever. That being, of course, The Last of Us Part 2, or The Last of Us Season 2. Anyway, let's get into it. And let me start here. I am not trying to jump on the hate bandwagon. There's plenty of that out there already. And in fact, as unpopular an opinion as I think this is, I actually like the second game. While it didn't resonate with me the same way the first game did, I thought that it told an interesting story about the cost to one's humanity of vengeance. And so it subverted my expectations with taking its two anti-heroes or protagonists, if you prefer, and killing one of them off and turning one of them, I think, quite clearly into an antagonist was was interesting. It was a very different and surprising way to take the story. The TV adaptation, on the other hand, didn't work for me, and here's why. And first, I want to start by giving credit where it's due. The world building in this series is absolutely impeccable. Every frame feels lived in, every abandoned building has a story to tell. The visual effects, the creature design, the environments are top tier, and they're up there with Game of Thrones in its prime. And I think that so much of it looks exactly like it did in the game. And I think it's a pretty amazing accomplishment that they managed to do that. So even the derivations from the game, like the episode between Bill and Frank in season one, I thought were thoughtful expansions of the world and gave us another perspective on an unlikely connection between two people, after the collapse of society. And I think the acting is uniformly strong, if not excellent in most cases, from Pedro Pascal's Joel to Jeffrey Wright's portrayal of Isaac, Isabella Merced as Dina, and Caitlin Dever as Abby, and young Mazzino as Jesse. And yeah, Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Does her character of Ellie embody the character from the game? No. Does her character have the same depth or the emotional arc from the first game to the second? No. Do I prefer Ashley Johnson's portrayal of Ellie? Yes, but I think it's reductive to say that Bella Ramsey can't act because she clearly can. I feel like the criticism being leveled at Ramsey online, most of it isn't about performance, I don't think. It's about people conflating performance with looks or gender identity or orientation. I don't care about any of that stuff. I do care about performance, obviously, but if you have issues with Ellie in the show, and I do, then I think we need to talk about direction at least as much as the casting, because I think Ramsey was given the wrong notes. In the game, Ellie is layered. She starts out observant, funny, compassionate, and over time, trauma and experience chips away at those qualities, and you see her becoming more volatile and hardened, and you understand why. In the show, she starts off brash and impulsive, and she doesn't listen to authority or anybody else, and she's kind of a jerk to start with, and that makes her arc shallower. One of the biggest challenges that the show faces, and honestly one of the reasons the second game itself was so controversial, is this. The loss of Joel means the loss of the story's emotional anchor. It loses its core. In the first season and in the first game, Joel and Ellie had this dynamic between the two of them that was just electric. You've got this world weary, emotionally closed off man who has 15 years on or whatever it was, has not gotten over the death of his young daughter, who incidentally is about the same age as Ellie is when he and she first connect. And you've got Ellie, who's a wide-eyed, stubborn but curious teenager who is, the two of them are slowly learning to rely on each other. And that contrast gave the story heart, it gave intention, it gave it character growth. So when Joel is suddenly gone, that tension is too. And the person who takes his place at Ellie's side is Dina. Now, Dina's a solid character in the game and in the TV show. She's thoughtful, she's caring, she brings out Ellie's softness. But here's the problem: they're a little bit too similar. They're similar in age, they're similar in outlook and arguably experience and emotional bandwidth, and that makes their scenes feel flatter and more static. There's not the same friction. There's not the same sense of discovery. And when you pair that with Ellie already being emotionally hardened and prickly from the very opening scenes, the story just becomes a slower burn. Not to mention the fact the writers seem to have made Dina the brains and the heart of the two of them and gave Ellie the drive and the rage. Which I guess they did that for dramatic tension, but I think particularly in Ellie's case, it just made the character a bit stunted, and it's harder to invest in that, especially after the emotionally rich interplay of Joel and Ellie in season one. And once you start looking closer, I think more cracks appear. So characters act irrationally, constantly. They speak at full volume in dangerous zones. They walk down the center of wide open streets. And they play the frigging drums in an abandoned music shop when they should when they should be quiet. Little things, maybe, but they break immersion. They make you question the world's rules, and they make the characters look dumb for doing this when it's like, oh, well, the street was empty a minute ago. Okay, well, who's to say that there isn't a patrol coming down it now, but you're going to start a rock band now. Got it. Then there's the pacing. So I felt like it was sort of all over the place, with some episodes feeling like they were rushed. And I think the last episode of the season was a good example of this. I mean, there were 7 episodes in the second season. It felt like it should have been 8 or 9 or even 10. But then it gets to the final episode and it's like moments that needed space emotionally or narratively were rushed past, and conversations that should have landed felt like they were placeholders. It felt like the writers were checking off boxes to get to a cliffhanger. And so you've got Ellie, who starts, grabs a boat and starts piloting it, even though I don't think she's ever supposed to have seen a boat before, but sure, let's have her in full command of it, and then gets knocked off by a rogue wave, ends up on a beach, grabbed up by the Seraphites, is in danger for about 30 seconds of being disemboweled, and then gets right back on a boat and continues on to the final confrontation, if you want to call it that, at the aquarium. And it just felt like this crazy breakneck pace for no reason. And in fact, all those scenes just would have felt better being extended a bit longer, but that's not the way that it played out. And then there's that final scene of Abby walking through a stadium surrounded by her militarized community. And those of us who have played the game, it's a strange anticlimactic way to end. Like a stinger after the credits have rolled. And I think it actually probably would have been better as that. Or better still, it would have just made for a good opening for season 3. And I think they did that because they were probably handing off the story to say, okay, and now we're going to focus the majority of season 3 on Abby's story. But for newcomers, I imagine that was super confusing. Like, where are we? And why do I care? It just wasn't a strong handoff. It felt like a setup, but without the tension and without the emotional hook. So I think adapting something like The Last of Us Part 2 was never going to please everyone. I think a lot of people, frankly, wrote off the game because of the physicality of the game's version of Abby, who looked like a bruiser. But to be fair to the mythology of the game world, if you were raised in a militarized community, having to fight for everything and having a single-minded mission in life to avenge a loved one, you might be buffer than the average keyboard warrior. And I'm including myself in that, but I digress. Anyway, the game was controversial. But in the game, it all felt earned, and you lived those choices, and you played those choices. You suffered through them. You understood, even if you didn't agree, or at least I did. In the show, I felt like those same choices were forced. They haven't been given the time, the pacing, or the nuance to resonate. And it's a story that still has powerful bones. It's a world that you want to see more of. And it has actors who are bringing everything they have. It's just that the direction feels off, and it feels rushed, and it feels tonally unstable. And you've got a central character who started out abrasive and has only gotten worse. And before you dogpile on Bella Ramsey for that being the way that it's played, consider the showrunners of Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann could have asked for it to be done differently. They could have asked for another take. They could have given different notes, but they didn't. So that leads me to think that they wanted it to be played that way in the adaptation for whatever reason that I may not agree with. So I think Bella Ramsey has been unfortunately and unfairly maligned in this situation because people do care a lot about the source material, and I'm one of them. Anyway, that's my opinion on The Last of Us Season 2, and you know what they say about opinions. They're like everybody is one. Or has one. Everybody has one. So let me see yours in the comments. Your opinion, not your and like and subscribe for more Retro Future Guy content. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.